am really excited about our guest. You may remember Brandon Showalter as I interviewed him in a part 1 and a part 2 several months ago. He's an investigative journalist with the Christian Post. He's also a contributor to the Tucker Carlson documentary that's going to air tonight called Transgressive. The culture of, I believe it's called confusion. I'll make sure that Brandon corrects me if I'm wrong. But I'm really excited to bring Brandon on and to answer questions that some of you I know are asking with this phenomenon going on in our country today of transgender. And from what Brandon has told me, this documentary that's coming out tonight on Fox Nation that Tucker Carlson is very involved in is going to educate, but also, if my words are correctly, blow the lid off of what is happening in our culture today. So without further ado, let's bring on Brandon. Hey, Brandon, how are you?
Hi, Victoria. Good to be with you again.
Oh, it's so great to have you, Brandon. First of all, congratulations on the documentary coming out tonight. I know it's been, I don't know, you can enlighten me how long you guys have been working on it, but I know there have been texts going back from you and I about it's going to air. We're waiting for it. Can you keep praying? It's almost coming out. And I don't know if there was backlash or if there was those trying to keep it from airing. But Brandon, tell us a little bit about when this started, how you got involved with this documentary coming out, and why we even need such a documentary today.
Well, yes, I'm happy to talk about all of that. And your title was almost right. It was Transgressive, the Cult of Confusion, because it does function as a cult, but it is saturated throughout the culture. So it's a very, it is appropriately titled. But yes, it's so crazy. I don't know what all of the delays were. I think it was supposed to come out earlier this year. I mean, Tucker said in July that it was going to be out then. He said on the air, but I got delayed. I guess they had final production editing or whatever it was that they had to push it back. But today on Fox Nation, I keep checking it, but Tucker has said that it will be available on Fox Nation as of September 8th, which is today. So I anticipate that tonight he'll say something about it, and it will be available for everybody to see if you subscribe. 11 months ago, I was filmed for this, almost to the day. Wow. And it was just, I got connected with one of his producers through Walt Heyer, who is a man, I think he's in his 80s now, who had the surgery, the transgender surgery, decades ago when it was more rare. And he connected me to one of his producers, and he came out here and filmed me because of my extensive journalistic work on this subject. And we've been praying just for a successful release ever since. I think this documentary is so necessary because what I like to say is that when people ask me, why do you care so much about this issue? Because they just seem to think that these poor people are just a few, folks on the margins who's struggling. Why do you care? It's like, this is a medical scandal. It's one of the worst medical scandals of all time. And worst of all, in my opinion, most of its victims are minors and young adults. And so
Brandon, wait, hold 1 second there, because I'm going to maybe jump in here with some questions that are, if they're popping in my mind, I'm wondering if they're popping in others' minds.
Sure.
And I think this is so important of a discussion. You said this gentleman that's involved he transitioned over a decade ago when it wasn't so
many decades ago.
So how long does this go back, Brandon? And how have we come from not hearing about it to today? I know of families that are telling me that there are 7 to 10 families in their communities who are having a child come to them saying, I'm confused about who I am.
It's been a slow, steady growth within.
Would you call it an indoctrination?
The education system is probably ground zero, even more than some of the medical clinics, because they inculcate children with an ideology that confuses them about their bodies. And then it sort of feeds, it's like a pipeline that feeds into these places where you can go get experimental hormones and then a disfiguring surgery. But it's also been systematized within the healthcare system. And there's a lot of money from within the medical industrial complex and within big pharma that I can point you to some of the statistics and the figures that investigative journalist friends and I have dug up in some of the journals where they admit to doing this to children. And it's all become, there's been a steady stream of propaganda to make this sound all high-minded and sophisticated, concurrent with this explosive systemizing of it in the medical system. So it used to be very sparse and underground to get these hormones and surgeries. This was not a widely practiced thing. As best I can tell, where it really started, sort of the explosion of it, was back in 1998 when there was a case report out of the Netherlands where a psychiatrist working with, it was either a psychiatrist or a psychologist working together with an endocrinologist, decided that they were going to try and trans a minor child with hormonal agents. And so that case report sort of served as the basis for what would later explode in the United States around 2007 when the first pediatric gender clinic opened in Boston. That was known as the Dutch.
Wait, Brandon. You're saying in 2007, the first gender pediatric clinic opened
in Boston.
Now, okay, so what I have heard as well, and what I've been told by people, and they're very credible, but I would love to hear from you if it's true, is that even Planned Parenthood is now offering the medication for free.
Medication. There, you can go within half an hour and get testosterone at Planned Parenthood. They're part of this industry now, and they call it gender affirming care. This whole industry is shrouded in euphemisms. They don't really tell you what they do or what these drugs, these hormonal agents, which are controlled substances, what they actually do to your body. I know of a woman who has a daughter with a developmental delay, and at 18, which I think you still have to be 18, but in certain states like Oregon, the age of majority is 15. So who knows, you can probably as a minor go into Planned Parenthood and get testosterone if you want, but you can definitely get it at some other hospital or gender clinic if you're underage. And it's just so predatory. But I know a mom who her daughter had a developmental delay, and her daughter at 18 went to a Planned Parenthood clinic in Washington State. And then she wanted to see how easy it would be if she could go into Planned Parenthood. And she's in her 50s, but she went in there, and within 30 minutes, they gave her testosterone. All they had to do was take a finger stick of her blood sample, take her blood pressure, and then she signed an informed consent document, which outlined a few, not all, of the risks. And she had a prescription within an hour.
Wait, so you're telling me no therapy,
nothing,
no counseling,
completely self-declaration,
not even checking her mental state. They just gave her the pills because she paid for them. I would assume, or they get paid by the government for.
I don't know what. I don't know how much money it was exchanged, but it was as easy as pie. Within half an hour, no psychiatric evaluation, nothing. It was just based on her own self-diagnosis.
Brandon, go back to this man who, for decades and decades ago, he went through how far did he go, and where is he now? How is he feeling about this today?
His name is Walt Heyer, and he's a hero. He's in his 80s, I believe, and he has a website. I believe it's called Sex Change Regret. And his main ministry is to help people who are confused about their bodies unpack the painful things that happened to them that precipitated the confusion, and not go down this destructive path. Because his marriage, I think he went full bore. I think he's had all the surgery that's possible for a male. And he tells his story very poignantly in this Tucker Carlson documentary, how he wound up at the end of his rope lying in a pile of vomit on some street and came back to the Lord Jesus Christ. And so there's been many miracles in his life, but he almost died. This lie that was told, and I don't want to give too much away, but he was abused as a child, and his grandmother dressed him up in a dress, and so that sowed the seeds of the confusion. She was a seamstress. I think it was a purple chiffon dress that she put him in, and then I think one of his relatives, I forget which one, maybe his uncle, started molesting him. And
was his grandmother mentally ill, or was she just using him to help her model her seamstress business?
I think he as a little boy was just kind of curious about it.
I guess it didn't matter.
I don't know the exact specifics of that story, but he tells it very powerfully in the documentary.
So he's in the documentary that we're talking about, that Tucker Carlson has coming out tonight
as well. Yes, and he was how I wound up in it as well. He referred me to his producer.
Oh my gosh, Brandon, talk to me, Brandon, and to the listeners and the watchers about how young is this happening now in this country? And it almost, I can't help correlate the Planned Parenthood connection, and as you said, the business, the money connection to abortion. The abortion industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It almost seems like they're trading it in as well for now a new business that's going to probably do the same thing, become a multi-billion-dollar industry if it hasn't already.
Well, we don't really know how much money they're making off of testosterone and all of these drugs, but this is a new income stream for them. They're in on it. I don't know when it was that they started, but I have seen documents in peer-reviewed medical journals showing that 13-year-old girls have had their breasts amputated. And I've seen
breasts,
physically healthy breasts.
13-year-old girls.
I've seen some of these pictures, and it looks like you're staring into the fourth circle of hell. It's horrific.
And what's happening to these children afterwards, Brandon? How soon before, if they do, and I'm asking as someone this is not my expertise, but I respect you, and I know this is something people want to talk about. You know, my platform is the pro-life abortion issue. But how can you tell us, do we even know at this point what's happening to these children, and God help their parents, who are making decisions for children under 18, having surgeries like this? What's happening to these kids?
It's such a nightmare. Some, like as I mentioned a moment ago, some states have actually lowered the age where you can do this even as a minor without your parents' consent. And in California right now, I think both houses of their legislature passed a bill where minors can come to California from out of state to get the trans drugs and surgeries against the will of their parents, and
without even their parents' permission, anything. Sort of like what's happening in some states with abortion. These young girls,
all connected.
Their guidance counselors are taking them on their lunch breaks for abortions without even telling their parents.
It's all, you see the assault on the human body in so many ways, but it's all connected. But, I say the 13-year-old girl that I've seen documented, I've also seen a clinician. This is footage that's been shared online by some people who are working in this space, of a gender clinician in Oakland, California, claiming that the youngest to have ever gone a masculinizing mastectomy, where they cut the breasts off, is a 12-year-old girl. And but children are started on puberty blockers as preteens and, 9, 10, 11, where they halt the pituitary signaling in the brain to stop their normal natural puberty. And it actually creates the endocrine disease states of hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, and it weakens their bones. It doesn't allow their skeletons to develop, and then it halts their endocrine system. And it's put forward out that it's a pause button or something on puberty. You can't pause puberty. You don't just stop your natural body processes and then pick it up later, because and these are high powered drugs too, that
are they being experimented on, Brandon?
Yes.
Basically,
Yes.
like guinea pigs?
Yes. This is human experimentation. And one of the worst examples that I've seen of this, because our tax dollars are funding this, was through the NIH. There's an endocrinologist that's in this Tucker Carlson film by the name of Michael Laidlaw. And he's a good friend of mine, and I met him a few years ago, and he and his colleagues did a FOIA request of documents from the government of the NIH where they were.
Can you explain what's a FOIA request?
FOIA request. It's a Freedom of Information Act request, where you can try to see documents from government stuff. And there's an NIH funded research grant from, I think it was 2015 when it started, to the tune of $5.7 million. And he got some documents through this FOIA request. It was in either 2017 or 2018. I don't remember exactly, but what he uncovered was a progress report where at these pediatric gender clinics that had received this research grant money from the NIH, was that one of the doctors had lowered the age of the cross-sex hormone cohort inclusion criteria from 13 years old to 8. So think of an 8-year-old child getting cross-sex hormones, and that's what our tax dollars are paying for. It's human experimentation. And worst of all, when he wrote to the NIH to ask what is going on, I've got concerns here. I'm an endocrinologist. This is it. He shared with me, and I've publicly reported this, so this is on public record, the bureaucrat, one of the directors of the sub-agencies of the NIH, basically gaslit him and said, this is just an observational study or some such nonsense. We're just observing this. We're just researching this. They tried to make it sound all high-minded and nuanced and sophisticated. They're experimenting on children. It's a distinction without a difference. And when I saw that document that he uncovered by FOIA, Victoria, I thought my eyes were going to bug out of my head. It's just one of those things that when you see it and you realize that you're the one that's in charge of reporting it, it just sends the cold shivers down your spine. Just what's happening to children is unconscionable, all in the name of medicine.
And Brandon, you can't keep your mouth shut, can you?
No,
It's like when
no.
you can't stay silent.
Right there. Just recently, I wrote a piece because I was just enraged by, I don't know if you follow the account Libs of TikTok on Twitter, but she released audio footage of a phone call that she made of Children's National Hospital here in Washington, D.C., where she asked him, I've got a transgender son, she said, that wants a hysterectomy and he's 16. Do you guys do that? And two different staffers at that children's hospital said, yes, we do. And their website said that they had done, but they had edited their website to say that was actually not true because of what broke loose at Boston Children's Hospital a couple weeks prior, when their own videos said that they do this to children, and people exposed it, and they all the media formed like a phalanx around it, a protection racket, to make it sound like these children's hospitals just do this selfless, great work, when in fact it's just insane. So, but all the narrative that the legacy media ran with was that this is not happening to children. This is a bunch of right-wing disinformation. This is just these crazy people. And so my poor housemates, they had to hear me ranting all weekend, because I've seen the literature, the peer-reviewed medical, research journal articles, where the doctors and the gender clinicians who do these sordid things themselves say that they've done it to under 18 youth. And so I just wrote a list. I said, don't take my word for it. Here's the citation. Here's the data table. Here's the page numbers. Yes, you are doing it to children, and I can prove it. I got the receipts.
You know what, Brandon? I can't help going back to the abortion issue. I've been in the work for 26 years and always heard, we don't do late term abortions in this country. You're a radical. You're just trying to create all this exaggeration. And then New York happened, and they were lighting up buildings because they passed late term abortion bills and laws. And these people were saying, wait, what? It's the same kind of thing. People just want to stick their heads in the sand, and instead of, once they think they know they can't keep their mouth shut anymore, or they can't plead ignorance anymore. So Brandon, I'm going to ask you a radical question, but I doubt you've ever heard, anything that's too radical. But someone recently was talking to me about this issue. And as I said, I do not pretend to be the expert. That's why I have you here. I'm learning about all this myself. But this person said to me, there is no way something's going on with our government in partnership with the medical community, because how is this now happening that it's rampant with these children being confused? They're committing suicide, the suicide rates among teenagers. One woman told me her daughter's struggling with being a lesbian and thinking she's in the wrong body, and they had to put her in a psychiatric ward because she did try to commit suicide. And the nurse said to her, this I just heard recently, the nurse said, I've been a nurse for 30 plus years. I have never seen the suicide rates among teenagers. We don't even have enough beds for them anymore that are confused. So this person was saying to me, do you think, Victoria, that something was put in immunizations back when our children were younger that caused them, that maybe a batch of immunization, and I'm not trying to start some crazy thing here, theory, that a batch went out as an experiment, and that some children got it and it changed the way their brains function or their hormones. Is there any truth to that, Brandon? Could there be?
I don't have any firsthand evidence of that, so I can't say, but I don't blame people at all for trying to wonder, because of just what's gone wrong with the culture, and to see these staggering rates of all this confusion. I think, from a spiritual perspective, I think the enemy of our souls is just throwing the kitchen sink at us, especially this younger generation. But let's just say at this point, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
So anything's possible.
What I can say for sure is that big tech and the social media companies and the way in which this has been marketed to young people, these videos, there's no question that an internet-fueled social contagion has just poured gasoline on this fire. Because I think last time we talked, I mentioned that book, Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreier, where she talks about how there's an unmistakable phenomenon going on where on websites like Tumblr and YouTube, these teenage girls who are vulnerable, often autistic, struggling with their mental health, come out as trans in friend groups in these clusters, there's no question that that is a huge factor. But as to the other things that might be, facilitating this, you mentioned immunizations or something in the food or the water. I don't know any evidence of that, but when you fall down this rabbit hole, nothing would surprise me.
Well, I told that person I was going to ask you that question because I said, I have no idea. I don't know enough. I don't want to pretend to know more than I know because I'm just learning about this too, as so many of us are doing.
Yeah.
Brandon, what are you seeing with parents? Because they contact me and I have to be honest with them. I'll connect them with you because I just don't want to do more damage than good by talking about something I am just not.
Yeah.
I'm not qualified to talk about. What are you seeing is happening to these parents, to these families that are being faced? And are you seeing more and more? Are more parents standing up saying enough is enough? I'm hearing about fathers losing their children, mothers losing their children because they're divorced, or the opposite parent wants to allow the child at 9, 10 years old to be experimented on with these drugs. What can people do, Brandon? What are they doing?
Well, I talk a little bit about that in the documentary, which a friend just messaged me and says that it is out. So she's watching it now.
Whoa, it's out right now.
So I didn't see it on the
Where
Fox
do people watch it, Brandon? Where do they watch?
FoxNation.com. Go and subscribe. And apparently it's trending and people are messaging me and saying, oh my goodness, I'm watching this now. And so it is. I didn't see it advertised on the main page, and I would anticipate that Tucker's probably going to say something about it tonight, but it is out. Because I'm hearing, literally as we were talking, people are pinging me. I'm like,
That's
oh,
awesome.
Very good. Very cool. And I'll probably put a post on my Facebook page here in a little bit. But I've lost count, Victoria, how many parents have reached out to me and they don't know what to do. And frankly, I mean, I can give them a little bit of advice, but because this is all so new and because of how it's exploded, people are still scrambling. Even the good people who know it's dangerous are trying to figure it all out and put together resources to help. But one of the things that I think is the most wise thing that you can do is not back down, is to recognize the material reality of our biology. Don't capitulate to any of this ideology with your words. I mean, I interviewed a detransitioner before who told me that and she's an older one too, and she's actually in the documentary tonight too. Her name is Kathy Grace Duncan. She years ago lived as a man for many years, took the hormones and had a radical encounter with the Holy Spirit, and God brought her back and reintegrated herself with her female body. And she's got an amazing story, which you'll see in the documentary. But one of the things I heard her say, and this is also in an interview that I did with her a few years ago, is that the way her church approached it, they said, we love you. Your goal here is to reintegrate with your female body because you are female. They used a pronoun now and then just during her process. Now, I don't think it's helpful to, affirm something that's not true. But in the messy work of pastoring, they sort of guided her along. They made it clear that, the end goal here is for you to reintegrate with your biology. But they helped her along. I think the way she said it was, they called me a he until I was comfortable enough to understand myself as a she. So they loved her in the midst of her process.
Right.
So
as the church should.
As the church should. So that's as much as I will go with the whole pronoun thing.
Okay.
But journalistically, I will never use those false things because we will not lie about something so basic to our being. That's our biology. If we have to lie about the most basic things, I mean, I don't think it serves anybody to lie. But don't affirm this, but just make parents don't be intimidated by the suicide threat. If you don't do this, I'll commit suicide. That's a total manipulation technique, and it's just they use that.
Do they learn that from chat rooms and things, Brandon?
That's totally, yes. All the activists and these,
they're giving them the key things to say and do
in order to manipulate. And yes,
wow.
Yeah.
So they're helping to turn them away from their parents.
And it's also scripted. These parents say, "Oh my goodness, that was exactly what I was told." And it's like universe. It's all, each story has its own unique horrors, but they're all so similar.
Brandon, is there any support groups that have been created for these parents? Because as I said, you're in this, so you hear about from these parents a lot more than I do. But even me in my line of work of pro-life platform, I'm hearing from more parents through social
Yeah.
media, which I am very humbled by that because they're
Yeah.
asking me for help, but it's not anything I don't know where to send them. So where do these parents go, Brandon, that need help, that are desperate for what to do, that are fighting for the lives of their children? And we're not talking about those, yes, they're fighting for those over 18. We're just talking here about children 18 and younger
Yeah.
who are being experimented on or being convinced by others, well, then maybe you're not a girl, maybe you're not a boy. And they're already confused. So where do they go? Is there any help for them, Brandon?
Yes, because of how many there are now, I think parents are finally finding each other and coordinating in an underground railroad of sorts. I've connected people behind the scenes because if Google suppresses information, you have to scour the internet in order to find.
They do the same thing with abortion
Yeah,
and
it's
abortion.
all so similar. It's all these elites that know how to control information and just suppress any kind of critical thought about it. There's a group called Parents of ROGD Kids, which I think is sort of a hub that I think they have chapters in every state now. There are other groups that are starting to form. It's the American College of Pediatricians is a group of doctors that's resisting this. They're sort of the alternative to the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is just totally captured by these ideologues. But so, yes, there is. I'm hoping with the Matt Walsh Daily Wire film, What is a Woman? And now this Tucker documentary. And I know of, I think, 5 other documentaries coming out. The media is so terrible that it's left to these independent filmmakers to tell the truth about it. And as we continue to kind of poke holes in this grand narrative that's been scripted around this, we'll start to see the fallout. And Victoria, I'm going to be among the few. I'm going to be among the few that's not shocked by how many are harmed when this all breaks.
Brandon, that's incredible that what you just said. Our media will not report the truth and what's really happening because they want to get behind this narrative. As we know, that's what who trusts the media anymore. So independent filmmakers are having to tell the truth.
Yeah. It's not new. They're like the muckrakers. They're like the muckrakers of old, but it's the same kind of dynamic. But this, I really can't recommend enough that people go see this Tucker. Whatever you think of Tucker Carlson, whether you like him or you loathe him, I've pre-screened this documentary. You'll need some tissues, but it's a gut punch, and it is just so. He and his team did a terrific job. I was honored to be a part of it.
Is it literally? I think it was you that said to me when we talked about this months ago when you told me that it was coming. This is going to blow the lid off of the issue.
I think it has the potential to do that.
Okay, so then how are others, if at all yet? I'm sure once they get wind of it, Brandon, they're going to come after people like you. They're going to come after Tucker more because you know how the media loves to come after him anyway. And they're going to try to discredit the entire thing.
Yeah. We keep telling the truth anyway. I mean, Tucker's on fire about this. And
what's gotten Tucker so on fire about it, Brandon? What is he just incensed with what is happening to the children in this country?
Yes. And I think he has done his homework. I mean, I can tell, and to his great credit, I mean, Victoria, I work with a lot of people from the left and the right alike. Tucker has interviewed radical feminists and lesbians on the air. The most of the public, regardless of their politics, is against doing this to children. They are, but you just would never know that because the Democratic Party is in lockstep with this, and some of the Republican Party, there's a few that are doing some good things, but a lot of them are just craven and cowardly.
So they make it look like it's the majority when it isn't.
Right, and so they've crafted this narrative again, and I have long said that this fight will be won. This medical scandal will come to an end when 2 things happen. 1, when the word transgender becomes synonymous with ice pick lobotomy and the medical scandal that was, when those things, when that's categorized in the public mind as a medical scandal, because it's one of the most horrific medical scandals that has ever existed, in my opinion. And 2, when the mass media is no longer able to frame this as a right versus left fight. And Tucker, to his great credit, he's interviewed so many people from a variety of backgrounds and political affiliations that have seen this and described this for what it is. And so he's been one of the boldest. I think he is the boldest voice in terms of those with a large media platform. He gets it. He doesn't capitulate to the language. He describes the medical atrocities for what it is. I mean, just the other week I was watching a segment that he had done. He's like, chemically castrating children is totally disgusting and evil. Yes, it's got to be described in those kind of stark terms because it's brutally disgusting what's going on against children. I mean, God help us. Well, I mean, Jesus doesn't take too kindly when you hurt children, and there isn't a millstone heavy enough for these people who are doing this stuff.
I'm telling you, Brandon, I just, my heart breaks for the parents, and my heart breaks for these kids. Later down the road, I think we're going to see the repercussions of this over the next several years.
They're starting to make more noise. They're starting to make more noise.
And I hope they do. Okay, in our last few minutes, Brandon, thank you so much for being here and shedding light on this. Tell everybody again what the documentary is, where they can find it. And I'd love to have you come back on again, in the near future so we can talk about what has happened with the unveiling of the truth and it being in people's faces. And, as Brandon said, no matter how you feel about Tucker Carlson or this issue, if you're afraid about speaking out because of being canceled or whatever, my gosh, people, we need more courageous people to stand up and speak truth, because then when the masses do that, Brandon, that's when more people are going to say enough is enough. So tell us where do they say whatever you want to in these last couple minutes.
Well, and to your point about whatever you think about who's, Tucker and all that, I know of a film that's coming out in October called Affirmation Generation, The Lies of Transgender Medicine, and it's made exclusively by left-wingers in California. So it's a left-wing oriented, the filmmakers are all on the political left. There's another one coming out soon. The filmmaker is also a Democrat. I can't say too much about that now because it's still in, I think, post-production. And there's other films coming out. But the Tucker Carlson original film can be screened as of today on Fox Nation if you subscribe. It's called Transgressive, The Cult of Confusion. It's got a rock star cast, if I do say so myself. It's in 2 parts, approximately 25 minutes each. Go give it a watch. I'm sure Tucker will probably say something on his show tonight about it, but it is available now on Fox Nation. Thank
you for what you're doing. Thank you for you're shedding lights on lots of things. And I know this has become your platform as the pro-life and the abortion issue has become mine. And I can't thank you enough for fighting for our children and for fighting to tell the truth.
Well, please keep me in your prayers. Please keep us in your prayers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brandon, for being here.
Thank you, Victoria.
And congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So everybody, that was Brandon Showalter. Go and find him on social media. You can follow him. You can send him messages. He has been a great resource for me as I told you already, people have reached out to me about this issue. They're crying for help, these parents. They don't know where to turn. They don't know what to do. This is so new right now. It's everywhere. And parents are desperate for help. So I just want to thank Brandon Showalter again. Make sure that you're turning in to Transgressive. That is the Tucker Carlson documentary that's airing on Fox Nation right now. As you heard Brandon say, he got messages that it is airing right now on Fox Nation. Make sure that you catch it. And look, you guys, if we don't start doing our own research and we don't start digging into the things that matter, there is a side and there is an agenda that's going to try to lie to us and tell us things that are not true. So all I'm saying is educate yourself, because once you do, you cannot plead ignorance anymore. And then you got to do something about it. Our children matter. The future of these children matter. The future of this country matters. So if you love children like I do, and you love this country like I do, let's start speaking the truth. And that's what was on my mind this week with Victoria Robinson. I'll catch you next week.